Welcome back to Research Realm. I'm Nicole Stiff, and today we're going to shift the perspective a little bit. So far, we've talked a lot about what is revival research. We've spoken to some patients, as well as the technology we use in clinical trials. But today we want to talk to the physicians who are actually leading those trials. And today I have with me Dr. Qaiser Shafiq, our cardiologist, who is one of our investigators here at Revival Research. And we want to know from him, what does it really look like on the day-to-day doing clinical research? So welcome, Dr. Shafiq. And if you don't mind telling us a little bit about your background, your medicine, how long you've been practicing, how did you get into clinical research?
Well, thank you for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here. I think Revival Research is at the forefront of clinical trials and research in Michigan and other areas. I'm one of the cardiologists in Southeast Michigan. My specialty within cardiology is interventional cardiology, and I see all sorts of patients with metabolic disease and heart and vascular disease, of course. My background, I have been cardiologist for about 20-some years now. And my research goes way back when I was in training. I was involved with my mentors in clinical research. And that interest just kept growing with time. And when I did my residence training and fellowship, and then eventually I had the opportunity to go to one of the, I will say, top medical school in country. And I was able to do a fellowship in clinical research that really piqued my interest in clinical trials, and that gave me opportunity to participate in what I'm doing today. So I know, of course, not everyone does research. There are a lot of physicians and people. There are some who are of that mind that they get into research, and there are others who don't. So it comes from, early childhood. My father is a professor in university, and he is keen in research. And from early on, he kept me interested in asking questions, and I think I'm still asking questions. So we try to answer what's relevant to us here in our patient population.
Thank you. All right. So we want to get right to the question of the reality of being a PI. So, a lot of us know being a PI, you're giving oversight, but what does it really look like being a PI in one of our trials?
So it's basically, we are the extended arm of the initial principal investigator who designed the study, because we are one of the sites that we serve here in Revival Research. Of course, we do our own clinical studies too, but also we run the studies of our colleagues who design these studies as well. So we have to keep in mind not only the technical part of the research, which is responsibility to conduct it properly, but also we have to be careful and mindful about the ethical part of the research, and keep in mind patients' interest first and foremost, to make sure that there's no harm done. Our basic principle is always no harm done. And in that process, education plays a big role, of course. This is on both sides. We educate every trial brings new science, so we have to educate our own staff and all the participants who are conducting the research, and it involves educating patients that why and how this research will help. So it's a huge responsibility, of course, and I feel that it gives me pleasure to be part of this, and that's my biggest achievement in this, that when I see something that we accomplish and it brings fruit, and we advance science through research this way.
And what would you say a typical day is like for you? Do you think you spend more time with patient care, physician oversight, team coordination, documentation? What is that like from a PI?
So I divide my time in many different ways. I am what we will consider a clinical scientist. So I do more than 75% clinical work. So that involves clinic, seeing patients, and then a few days of that, and then it involves me doing procedures, which are my interventional cardiology procedures and structural heart procedures that I do. And then I divide my time with the clinical research within that realm. Then it's oversight, which is documentation part, then seeing patients, discussing with patients the clinical research itself, consents, and then seeing patients during the trial and studies and follow-up. So I would say a typical day starts from my clinical work, and then it will include seeing patients and discussing research with them, and then meeting with the team at the end of the day and discussing the documentation part. So usually, you have to kind of divide your day and prioritize what's comes next.
And talking about responsibility as a PI, when something goes wrong in a study, where does that responsibility lie?
Well, eventually it's the principal investigator's responsibility to make sure this trial is conducted properly, and again, good clinical practices are followed. Of course, it can go wrong in many ways. It can go wrong not only in documentation, it can go wrong in conducting the trial itself, the medication, this one. So it's a different level of wrong that we talk about in clinical trials. But I would say that eventually the responsibility is principal investigator. So we have to actually go through each step and then follow through and see where it happened and sort of figure out why, and then we do it. But I would say yes, the principal investigator has to be knowledgeable about the how the trial is being conducted. And it all starts with the educating the staff and people who are at the front lines of conducting trial. Our coordinators, they have huge responsibility in this. So training them is a big part of avoiding those mistakes.
Okay. And now let's talk a little bit about your patients. How do you build trust with the patients that are entering into a clinical trial?
The biggest thing that happens is that whenever a trial comes, patients understand that they do understand the medications, all the medications come through research. They know that, but they don't know how the research is actually done and what it involves, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the biggest thing. So whenever we see patients, we educate them that that the research involves their participation. That if they are not part of this treatment process and part of this advancing science, we cannot do anything. So that's how we build the trust, by involving them in the process of research itself. So they have to understand that the research involves their participation, that if they have a disease, we know and understand, and they understand what the disease is. So basically, the more we educate them, the more trust builds. So the trust building starts with educating patients about their own disease itself, and then educating them about the research, how it's being done, and how it could potentially help. And that, I think, is the best way that we do this.
And what would you say is the most concerns that come from patients? Like what types of things do they worry about when they're thinking about joining a trial?
The concern is the concern that always patients have, and that's they're guinea pigs. Okay, and everyone thinks that, yeah, they're guinea pigs. And, you're a guinea pig the moment you go out of the door every day. Unexpected things happen and you cannot control. Research actually is the most controlled thing that we do. We are controlling a lot of variables, right? So careful selection of the participant, and the research starts with we have the different phases, as we discussed, phase 1, 2, and 3. So in phase 1, you do, on the mechanism of the study, the drug itself, and then you expand its, investigation into more sicker population and such. But this, the guinea pig idea has been around, and people are concerned for a very good reason, because pharmaceutical companies do take advantage, and bad things do happen, scams happen. So that's the role of physician, to serve as a guardian between something that's being tested and on whom it's being tested, and be the guardian there, and decide if this is really scientifically and ethically a viable option or not. So once patient understand that we are doing something for their interest and for their benefit, then usually they are more open to the idea of being a participant in research.
And do you think there's anything that separates a good patient experience from a great one? Like, is there anything that you personally do or your staff does to give them a really great experience during their participation?
I think keeping in touch with them, communication is a huge key. And the more you explain, and over-explaining in research is never bad, because patients have a lot of questions. And I think a great experience is that if you go above, and beyond, and communicate in different ways, verbally, in text, in pictures, in videos. So I think different ways of communicating the same thing and making it more, open to them helps a lot. I think that's the key that can make a good experience from greater, reaching out to them before they even have a question.
Mm-hmm. All right, so now we're going to go into more of like the protocol. So have you ever had a protocol where you've actually pushed back on the protocol, the way it was designed, how you feel it could be done better based on the patients that they're looking for that particular trial? Have you ever given pushback to a sponsor or given them some advice maybe on protocol design?
Yeah, actually it happens often because of few reasons. The reasons are that the population that they are anticipating to test, a medication or a trial medication, we may not have the exact same population. We may not have the exact same, the type of disease or the variety that they're looking for, and sometimes based on the demographics, then you may not be able to enroll patients that they're looking for. So that's one. The second is the severity of the disease itself and how patients in real life can actually go through that trial or not. Feasibility matters, and feasibility is different for different reasons. For patient education, how much they understand, from that to their transport and their ability to take certain medications, and the side effect profiles that could happen and potential of that. So yes, that I wouldn't say is pushback. I'd say that we give our feedback, and sometimes based on that, the investigators, the initial trial designer will go through, and they do take that into consideration, and they may change their eligibility criteria based on that. Of course, the people who are designing these trials are also clinicians and physicians, and they do know. We provide them our feedback, and based on that, they do take that into account, and we appreciate that.
Great. And when it comes to these studies, what's one thing sponsors consistently underestimate about site operations when it comes to a trial?
Underestimate? I think they underestimate sometimes how we can reach to the patient and how we can recruit the patient. Our revival research has a very robust mechanism of reaching out to the patient and databases that we have been creating. So I think that sometimes surprises sponsors, that how we have been able to achieve our goal so quickly. And so I think, again, it depends on the trial design and the trial eligibility, what kind of population they're looking for, and what we have. We do go through feasibility in the beginning, and that usually helps out these aspects.
And do you feel like the protocols typically reflect real-world practices?
Most of them, yes. Phase 3 clinical trials are designed to more or less represent the real, life scenarios and disease population. And I would say, yes, they do. And again, it varies based on demographics and where you're testing and studying the certain medication or trial.
Okay. And now let's talk about recruitment. Recruitment and retention are very important in clinical trials. So what are the biggest barriers you see when enrolling patients into these cardio trials?
I think the biggest thing I notice is, again, it comes down to educating the patient themselves about the trials, what the trials are, why we do them, how we do them, what it involves, logistics, around communicating with the patient is probably the biggest barrier. The more we go out in community, in public, and talk about it and educate patients, the more it becomes easier to recruit patients. And again, we have to not make them feel that they are participating into something guinea pig experiment. Actually, they should be considered, they should be made to feel that they are participating in something bigger, something in advancing the science itself. And that will help not only them, but the future generations. And I think that's the biggest barrier that I see, that as long as we can cross that and they understand it, they are very willing to listen to us.
And a lot of your trials, patients do have to be in the study for quite a while and be followed up. So
exactly. So retention, again, retention comes from setting the expectation from the beginning. You have to explain that how long it takes to see the result of something. None of the medications and trials, investigational materials are, we don't have a magic bullet or magic drug. So everything takes time, and we have to study it carefully over years to really see if it works or not. So each trial has different duration. So setting that expectation from the beginning helps a lot.
And what role do you think the coordinator plays when it comes to recruitment?
A huge role. Of course, the more confident and educated they are in understanding the study, the more they are able to explain to the participant as well, or the potential participant, the study itself.
And speaking of the coordinators, now we want to talk about team dynamics. What makes a research team work really well together?
I think everyone plays a very significant and important role, from people who are making calls to recruit patients and explaining eligibility. Then patients come here and they go through the initial screening, consent processing, lab, so the lab staff themselves, and then the physician who is doing their exams, and then drug administration. So everyone plays a huge role, and the workflow that's designed at the beginning for trial has a huge role to play in this to make things smooth. And I think the biggest thing that helps is the feedback of each peg in the wheel. So each coordinator, when they go and do the feedback to the other one, I think that helps the most.
Collaboration.
To collaborate in creating this team environment.
And how much are you involved day to day with, the daily operations of what's going on at the site, between the team and the patients and the various studies?
Yes, right. So when I am in my clinic and in my procedures and such, usually a team keeps me updated via text messages, and then I get back to them and we communicate on a daily basis on all the operational aspects of the clinical trial, from enrolling new patients to what's going on with the patients at the moment right now, and then what's the next steps. The labs results when come back, we review them on a daily basis to see the progress of the patients during the trial itself. If there are any retention issues, if patient is not answering, we make phone calls to get to them and reach out to answer their questions if there's any difficulty in retaining. So I think this feedback from them, how things are going, and then guidance we provide that helps the workflow going and the team to work effectively.
Okay. And compliance, documentation, oversight. So clinical research is highly regulated, and documentation is a huge part of the workload. So how much of your time is actually spent on all of the documentation?
I think use of our computer softwares in real time and such have made things extremely easy for us, and remote access is available. So I don't have to spend a whole lot of time documenting. I remember the days 15 years ago when everything was done on papers and we had binders, the size of houses where we had to keep all the data. Nowadays, everything you can do it in a computer fairly quickly, and it doesn't take a whole lot of time, really.
So you feel like you can provide better oversight to make sure quality is being taken care of, addressing things with your team.
Right.
Does the documentation ever take away from your patient interaction? Or do you think that with everything being electronic, it is a little bit easier to have that more face-to-face with the patient?
Right. It is getting easier, yes.
All right, so you've mentioned the use of technology instead of paper. So let's talk a little bit about technology. There's obviously a lot of platforms needed for research, but what systems do you interact with on a daily basis for the research?
Well, I deal with a lot of electronic medical record systems. We have Epic and we have Real-Time. We have other database systems that we use as well. And all of them incorporating AI technology, and that helps summarize a lot of information quickly and accessing information. And I think with time, these systems are becoming more efficient and helping us in streamlining our processes so we can provide better documentation.
Do you feel like there needs to be more integration in between the systems that you're using? Does it ever become frustrating, like going into different platforms?
Right, yes. And I understand most of them are proprietary systems that different companies use. We try our best to use the most user-friendly systems that can help. It's always a challenge whenever a new technology comes, and I think with time, hopefully it will keep making it easier for us to talk one system with the other.
Okay, so next we want to talk about the future. So where you sit currently as a PI, do you think running clinical trials will get easier or harder over the next few years?
In my opinion, clinical trials, based on the diseases that we are investigating and how they are coming along, I think it will get easier to conduct the trial. However, the questions that we are going to answer will get harder. I think we will ask more harder questions, and to find the answer, it will get easier because we have more access to information that we never used to have. It's getting easier to collect data and easier to collect information. So to find an answer, it's similar to you had a question and you had to go and look it up in the library or ask someone who knows maybe 20 miles of, he lives somewhere, right? And you have to travel there. And now you can ask question and the answer is already there in your phone using ChatGPT or similar AI platforms, right? So your access to information definitely helps answering questions, but I think we will be asking harder questions to address the challenging diseases that are still affecting our patient population.
So do you feel it will be more on the clinical side or administrative side for the work?
I think there's always a balance, and the harder it will be actually more on the clinical side. I think just because of the nature of diseases that we are trying to tackle, there are still a lot of unanswered questions. Just the most common diseases, like even diabetes, we still are struggling to control and find the treatment. So if we have more access to information, yes, we will want to ask more difficult questions and tackle those. So I think we'll have to explore more ways to answer those questions and more ways we will have to investigate. Administrative, as people understand and educate more, I think it's becoming more streamlined processes to actually do the trial and do the administrative process and documentation. Those parts are all getting easier. But again, I hope that in the clinical world also, there's a big boom of the sensor technology and the AI use in the clinical world as well, in imaging, for example, that is helping to accelerate that clinical process too. So, but I think it's still catching up. It will take some time.
Okay. And if you could give one prediction for clinical research in the next 5 years, what would it be?
I think there are two things I think will happen. I think there will be more use of precision medicine and DNA and gene-based, gene-modifying therapies will become more common and more applicable to us and more available to us, such as the gene for Down syndrome, gene modification that has already been in studies. So I think using that technology and AI will help us understand that even more, because genome is a database eventually, and with AI we can explore that and try to answer a lot of questions that we can't. So precision medication and using the genetics will be on the forefront of future research. The other thing is that nanorobots and using new medication delivery methods will be available. Currently, the medications that we use, they are delivered using inert material or in a pill form, but I think that will change. And I think there are two things, if I have to summarize. One is the use of genetics and modifying the genome and itself. And secondly, I think in the drug delivery, there will be significant advances. And collection of more data from the population itself, health data, will accelerate understanding the disease patterns. And I think that's a huge part of all these health apps that we are using in Apple and other devices as well, which I think generates a lot of data, and integrating that data with their disease processes will help us significantly in understanding the onset of disease and then, of course, prevention of the disease.
All right. Well, thank you. Okay. All right. So now it's rapid fire round time. So you're going to give either one word or one line statement. I'm just going to ask one right after another. So whatever comes to your mind, answer that first. Any questions?
All right.
All right. Here we go. All right. First one, paper or digital?
Digital.
Speed or accuracy?
Accuracy.
More patients or better data?
Better data.
Protocol flexibility or strict compliance?
Strict compliance.
AI in trials, helpful or hype?
I think it's helpful.
Biggest headache, recruitment, compliance, or systems?
I think it's systems.
Most underrated role in a trial?
Underrated, it's a coordinator.
One word to describe clinical research.
Progress.
Wonderful, great. Good job.
All right.
You did really good.
Welcome.
You didn't miss a single one. All right, so before we go today, what's one thing you wish more people understood about being a principal investigator?
Right. So, principal investigator is a physician, and he's also a scientist, and he's also a guardian between the pharmaceutical industry and the patients. So I would like to send this message to the listeners and to the patients. and the companies who come to us for the clinical trials that principal investigator has a lot of hats he has to wear every day, and he has to think about not only how the trial is going to be conducted, but also think about the best interest of the patients and participants. And also, he has to be a team leader to make sure that his team works effectively and conducts the trial in a way where it is used for eventually for data collection and then the eventual conclusion of that trial. If the trial is not conducted effectively and the data is lost, that's the time lost and that's the patient time wasted as well. And some of the patients who are enrolled for the specifically treatment of critical diseases, their time is lost and their life is lost. So we have to. So I would like others to understand that our responsibility is manifold. That we interact with the industry, we interact with the patient, interact with our staff, and we serve as a leader to make sure that all these roles are played effectively.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. And thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
So it was a pleasure having you here today and to hear your insights. And we really enjoy having you here as part of our team here at Revival. And for the listeners, we will be back with part 2, so stay tuned.